Hello, let us go through this question taken from the March 2022 Cambridge A-Level Biology paper, paper 22. 1A. Table 1.1 shows 3 of the processes by which substances in solution can move across cell membranes. It also lists 5 statements that may apply to each of these 3 processes: active transport, facilitated diffusion, and simple diffusion. Now, what you need to do, complete table 1.1 to show which of the statements apply to each of the 3 processes shown. Each box must contain a tick or a cross, which means that if you leave it blank, it is considered as a wrong answer. Statement number 1. Movement of oxygen into a red blood cell. Oxygen moves into the red blood cell by simple diffusion. Statement number 2. Occurs in both animal and plant cells. Well, active transport, facilitated diffusion, as well as simple diffusion can occur in both animal and plant cells. So therefore, this statement applies to all 3 processes. Statement number 3. Uses carrier proteins. Active transport and facilitated diffusion uses protein embedded in the membrane, whereas simple diffusion does not require protein in the membrane. So therefore, this statement applies to active transport and also facilitated diffusion, but does not apply to simple diffusion. Statement number 4. Movement of non-polar molecules between the fatty acid tail of the phospholipid molecules. Okay, so let me show you what we mean by fatty acid tail of the phospholipid molecules. So let's say now I'm drawing a section of the phospholipid bilayer of a cell surface membrane. So in this statement, it is said that non-polar molecule, so something like this, non-polar molecule move between the fatty acid tail of the phospholipid molecule. So this is the fatty acid tail of the phospholipid molecule. So in this case, what we can see from here is that the non-polar molecule does not require a protein in the membrane. This movement is directly across the phospholipid bilayer between the fatty acid tail. So this process is called simple diffusion. Okay, next, let us refer to statement number 5. Movement of ions down a concentration gradient. So there are 2 keywords here. The first one is the word ion, and the second one is the term down, the word down, or the phrase down a concentration gradient. Now, out of these 3 processes, only facilitated diffusion and simple diffusion occurs down a concentration gradient. Active transport, on the other hand, occurs against the concentration gradient. So obviously, statement number 5 does not apply to active transport. Okay, next, look at the term ions. The phospholipid bilayer is not permeable to charged ions. So therefore, ions need to use protein in the membrane in order to move into or out of the cell. So which means that movement of ion down a concentration gradient occurs by facilitated diffusion. So therefore, this statement applies to facilitated diffusion, but does not apply to simple diffusion. There you go. We have now completed table 1.1. Okay, next, let us look at part B, Figure 1.1 is a simplified diagram representing a transverse section of part of a young root. The diagram is not to scale. B1. On figure 1.1, draw a label line and label with the letter C to identify the Casparian strip. Casparian strip is actually a band which is found in the cell wall of the endodermal cell, and the Casparian strip is waterproof. So Casparian strip is found in the cell wall, and it is actually found here. So these four structures found in the cell wall of these three cells are actually known as Casparian strips. The question says draw a label line, so you only need to label one of them. Okay, let me erase the circles. We will only label one of them with a label line. So let's say I'll try to label this one. So if possible, please use a ruler to draw the label line and then label it with C. Don't label it with the term Casparian strip, but label it with the letter C as instructed. So here we go, C. One of the common mistake is that students, sometimes when they draw the labeling line, they just draw like this, and then they just label like this. Do you realize that the label line does not actually touch the Casparian strip? If this is the case, you will not be awarded a mark. Okay, next, look at B2. Root hairs measure approximately 5 micrometer in diameter and 500 micrometer in length. So now, explain how this adapts root hair for the absorption of water. In other words, how this elongated shape of the root hair, this finger-like shape of the root hair, adapt the root hair so that it can carry out absorption of water more efficiently. So your answer would be to provide a large surface area. Okay, next. Name the pathway for the movement of water shown by the arrows in figure 1.1. Let's go back to the picture. So we are referring to these arrows. So these arrows are showing the movement of water from cell wall of one cell to the cell wall of another cell. This pathway is called apoplast pathway or apoplastic pathway. Now let us move on now to part C. Water enters the xylem vessel shown in figure 1.1. Explain how water moves up the xylem vessel to the leaf in a continuous column. Okay, try to highlight some of the keywords in this question. Now first, the command word explain, which means that you don't only just describe what happened to the water, you have to give reason. You have to give further elaboration as to why these things, why water move like this, right? And it says move up the xylem, move up the xylem vessel, defying gravity. And then the term continuous column. First of all, how is it possible that water forms continuous column? So water forms continuous column because water tend to stick together. Neighboring water molecules, they tend to stick together. And this happens because water molecules are polar molecules, and therefore they are attracted to each other by hydrogen bonds. If you still remember, water molecule consists of 2 hydrogen atom and 1 oxygen atom, in which the hydrogen atoms are slightly positively charged, while the oxygen atom is slightly negatively charged. Therefore, when there are 2 water molecule coming close together, the slightly negatively charged oxygen atom will be attracted to the slightly positively charged hydrogen atom of the neighboring water molecules, forming hydrogen bonds. Let's say this circle represents water molecule. So water molecules, they would tend to stick together to form a continuous column, and they stick together by hydrogen bonding. This ability for the water molecule to stick together is called cohesion. Cohesion. Okay, next. How can water move up the xylem vessel, defying gravitational force? So let's say now this is the xylem vessel. This is the root, and this part is the leaf. So now we already know that water will form continuous water column due to cohesion. But what actually prevents this water column from slipping downwards due to gravity? Instead, they move upwards, right? So this is because these water molecules, they are attracted to the xylem wall. They are attracted to the cellulose and the lignin on the xylem wall, right? So this ability for the water molecules to stick to the xylem wall is called adhesion. Adhesion. Now we know that water forms a column, continuous column. The water column can stick to the xylem wall due to adhesion, but what causes water to move upward, right? What do we call the pulling force that pulls or draw water upwards from the root to the leaf, right? This pulling force is called transpiration pull. In the leaf, water is lost from the leaf into the atmosphere due to a process called transpiration. And because of that, water moves out of the xylem into the leaf cells, right? So as water moves out of the xylem vessel into the leaf cell, so what happened now is that there will be less water at the top of the xylem vessel, leading to a lower hydrostatic pressure at the top of the xylem vessel. Now, on the other hand, in the root, water enters the xylem vessel. So there will be a higher hydrostatic pressure at the bottom of the xylem vessel. This would then create a negative pressure, which means that now the top of the xylem vessel has a lower pressure, while the bottom of the xylem vessel has a higher pressure. This creates a negative pressure. This negative pressure is called tension. And it is this tension that leads to the formation of transpiration pool. And it is this transpiration pool that draws water upwards from the root to the leaf. So how do we write down the answer? So we can start with cohesion to explain how the continuous water column form, followed by adhesion that supports the water column, and then followed by transpiration pool, which draws up the water column. So let's start with cohesion. You can further elaborate on cohesion by saying that cohesion happens because adjacent water molecules form hydrogen bonds. This is due to the fact that hydrogen atom in the water molecule is slightly positively charged, while the oxygen atom in the water molecule is slightly negatively charged. Okay, then we move on to talk about adhesion. Adhesion occurs between the water molecules and the xylem wall. Or if you want to be more precise, you can say adhesion between water molecules and the cellulose and lignin of the xylem wall. And these adhesions supports the column of water. Now, after which we talk about transpiration. Transpiration creates tension in the xylem vessel from above, leading to transpiration pool. So this transpiration pool draws the water column up the xylem vessel. So with that, you have already explained how water moves up the xylem vessel in continuous water column.